Hello and welcome to The Problem With, the show where if it exists, it's got problems, and I'm here to discuss them. Let's talk about Wreck-It Ralph. Released in 2012, Wreck-It Ralph is about video game characters, specifically Ralph, the villain of the game Fix-It Felix Jr., and Vanellope Von Schweetz, the outcast of the game Sugar Rush. When Ralph gets tired of his life of being feared for being a villain and treated poorly by the other residents of his game, he takes it upon himself to try to earn a medal to show that he can be a hero too. Long story short, it doesn't end well for him, and he ends up in Sugar Rush, where he meets Vanellope, a character outcasted in her game for being a glitch. The two then go on an adventure to help Vanellope win the nightly race to get her on the roster, and get Ralph his medal back. Meanwhile, Fix-It Felix, accompanied by Sergeant Calhoun, the main protagonist of the game Hero's Duty, search for Ralph as well as the Cybugs, virus-like creatures that take it upon themselves to destroy everything they can. The movie itself is charming, funny, full of emotion, and absolutely filled to the brim with nostalgia. A simple story with fun characters, beautiful and engaging worlds, and one of the coolest twists I've seen since my last trip to Auntie Anne's.
I'm Turbo, the greatest racer ever!
Overall, it's a really good movie. And then they made the sequel.
3, 2, 1, go!
Released in 2018, Ralph Breaks the Internet is not a bad film, but it fails to capture the same charm that Wreck-It Ralph brought 6 years prior. When the first trailer came out, it was quickly given the label of the Emoji Movie, but better. And yeah, it's true. It is way better than the Emoji Movie. But when the thing you're being compared to is this?
Do we do after we go potty?
Should we wash our hands?
We're number 2!
Is that really hard to do? Well, today I'm going to go through the film and explain the issues I have with it, and why I think it's not as good as the original. Before we begin, I noticed this in editing, but Wreck-It Ralph shows that Sugar Rush has 2 arcade cabinets that work in a multiplayer type fashion, but in the sequel one of the cabinets is gone. How does that work? Do the 2 cabinets have 2 different worlds? Are there 2 Vanellopes? Or are the worlds linked? If they are linked, then what happens when one of the cabinets gets unplugged? Do they treat it like a normal evacuation? Or is it like a Thanos type thing where only half of the residents need to leave? This is giving me a headache. Let's just get back to the video. Wreck-It Ralph set up a few simple rules for the game characters to follow. Be in your game by the time the arcade opens. Try not to die outside your own game, because you won't respawn. And never go turbo, a term described by the film as abandoning your game in favor of another. Simple, right? Well, let's just forget about those rules, as they don't matter anyway. Yep, in the sequel, almost 2 out of the 3 things I listed are just forgotten. Ralph is constantly out of his game while the arcade is open, going to Sugar Rush in an attempt to make the game more interesting for Vanellope, as she breaks a rule that wasn't even brought up in the first movie, and takes control away from the player to try the new track Ralph made for her. Then, when the game breaks, Ralph is literally out in the open for anyone to see him in the wrong game. But that's just a short amount of time, right? Well, Ralph then decides the next day to go to the internet with Vanellope to try to get a new steering wheel for her game, flat out abandoning Fix-It Felix Jr. for who knows how long at the time. This was one of the main issues in the first movie. Ralph not being there, leaving Felix to have to find him, and his game being put out of order, and even possibly unplugged. In this film, it's fine. Go, leave your game. Felix even says he's going to cover for him. And do we get to see how Felix covers for the main villain of his game not being there? Nope, not even brought up. I assume he forced one of the citizens of the game to dress up as Ralph, but I don't think the writers thought of a way for Ralph to not be there, so they just didn't care enough. That's not even the worst of it. At the end of the film, Vanellope decides she wants to stay in an online game called Slaughter Race, breaking the one rule that made the main villain of the first film. She abandoned her game in favor of another. Vanellope literally went turbo, with no consequences, no questions asked. The most popular character of Sugar Rush, gone, and into some online GTA type game. Everyone's just cool with it. I can only assume they had some sort of idea where they just kill her in Sugar Rush. Some weird, dark cutscene. I don't know, let's just move on. This movie can be described as a kid at 7-Eleven who can't decide what Slurpee flavor to get, so he just mixes all of the flavors together and it tastes terrible, and he regrets it afterwards. And while that kid may or may not be me, this film has so many plots and it can't stick to one of them for more than 20 minutes. First, Ralph and Vanellope need to get a steering wheel to fix Sugar Rush, but oh no, they don't know how eBay works, and they don't have the money to pay for the wheel. Okay, so now they have to raise the money to pay for it. So they go to a spam website to try to gain tasks to make the money, going to the previously mentioned Slaughter Race to get a car from a character named Shank, as it will get them a ton of money for some reason. Oh, but wait, stealing is wrong, so instead they go meet, yes, some manager at a site called BuzzTube, because they couldn't use YouTube, even though YouTube appears and is even mentioned. But whatever, apparently BuzzTube can make Ralph an internet star and get them the money they need. But, oh no, Vanellope suddenly doesn't want to go back to Sugar Rush, because she finds Slaughter Race more entertaining, and she gets bored of Sugar Rush. And now Ralph is sad because he feels his best friend is abandoning him, because she is, and everyone else in her game. So Ralph gets a virus from the dark web that copies insecurities, and uh-oh, it copies Ralph's insecurity of being clingy and creates thousands of Ralphs to destroy the internet in an attempt to get a hold of Vanellope. So now Ralph has to stop that too. That's 8 plots, all crammed into a 2-hour movie. Not to mention the quote-unquote side plot of Felix and Calhoun adopting the Sugar Rush racers who were left homeless after the game was unplugged. And I say plot in quotations because we don't get to see any of it, maybe around 2 minutes total, once when they adopt the kids, and at the end for a stupid joke about the key to parenting.
You two, how on earth did you tame those things?
It's simple, Serge. The key to parenting is...
And then what you do is stick to and that is the secret to raising perfect children.
The movie can't focus on one plot because each of these plots alone would most likely not be long enough to pad out the full runtime of a movie, which, in all honesty, is not a good sign that the movie will be any good. Okay, so if you've watched the movie, I'm sure you know the scene where Vanellope goes to Oh My Disney, which is basically look at all the stuff we own.com, where she runs into the Disney princesses. It's a good scene, with a lot of jokes about the princesses movies. Nice little scene that is one of the only good cameo scenes in the film, and again, utilizing the nostalgia factor like in the first movie, bringing all these past and present Disney princesses together in one room. It's something that's never been done before. The problem is this line.
For the million-dollar question, do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up?
Yes, what is up with that?
Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't one of those, the women forcing their girl power down my throat, all these women ruining my movies. with their whammons. No, none of that. The issue with the line is that, with the exception of Elsa, Merida, and Mulan, the line is accurate. I mean, think about it. Anna had Kristoff to help her reach Elsa. Ariel had Eric to help fight Ursula. Rapunzel had Finn to help her leave the tower. Hell, Snow White had 8 guys helping her. The dwarves, plus a prince. Vanellope even had some of her own problems fixed because of Ralph, when he helped her make the car, and then taught her to drive. It's an inaccurate line that is only there for girl power pandering. And then there's a whole scene dedicated to girl power pandering. Again, don't get me wrong. This scene is fun, creative, and at times funny. But it's completely unnecessary. First of all, since when could Ariel control water? Wasn't that Moana's thing? And second of all, it's a 2-minute scene that could have lasted maybe 30 seconds. I understand the writers wanted each princess to use their powers in a big team-up way like the Avengers or something, but in reality, it would have been easier if they only used 1 or 2 of them. Why not let Elsa just make an ice slide that reaches to the ground? Or have Jasmine catch him on the carpet? Or have Rapunzel make the ultimate sacrifice and have him try to grab onto her hair or something, I don't know. It's kind of pointless to go into some intricate plan to save Ralph from falling, when really any of these shorter plans could have worked fine. Wreck-It Ralph established our 4 main heroes: Ralph, Vanellope, Felix, and Calhoun. Throughout the film, the viewers are shown their thoughts and feelings, helping them really connect with the 4 lead characters and grow to love them. This sequel? Let's just leave out 2 of the main characters from the first film to glorified cameos. Felix and Calhoun are both left out of 95% of the movie, only showing up at the start, then briefly at the end for the previously mentioned parenting joke. The start set up a side plot of the 2 becoming parents after adopting the Sugar Rush Racers, but it really serves no purpose other than motivation for Felix to help cover for Ralph while he gets the steering wheel. I loved Felix and Calhoun's side adventure in the first movie, and to see them wasted here is just awful. I get that the writers couldn't have all 4 of them in the internet, because then it would be too much like the first film, but they barely did anything with them. You set them up for a parenting plot that we never see. We set Felix up to have a side plot where he has to cover with Ralph, which we also never see. The movie could have excluded Felix and Calhoun altogether, and it would have been practically the same movie. But no, we have to show some form of sign that they exist. It seems that nowadays, movies feel the need to have the main characters have an argument at some point in the film and go their separate ways, even though the audience knows they'll get back together shortly after. Happens in almost every movie, and this movie is no exception. Wreck-It Ralph did it, but the way they did it worked well with the characters' personalities and motivation. King Candy gives Ralph's medal back and lies to him, saying that if Vanellope races, she'll be added to the game's roster, and players may think the game is broken due to her glitching, causing the game to be unplugged, and leaving Vanellope die with it because she can't leave her game. This causes Ralph to have a talk with Vanellope, and upon seeing he has the medal, she feels betrayed and doesn't believe him, leaving Ralph no other choice than to smash her cart. It's an emotional scene that shows the relationship between the 2 characters. Ralph wants to protect Vanellope, and Vanellope feels like she's being betrayed by her only friend. She thinks Ralph got bribed by King Candy to tell her not to race. In Ralph Breaks the Internet, however, they're both just garbage people. Ralph brings a virus to Slaughter Race to make the game boring in an attempt to get Vanellope to stay, showing him as just a selfish friend. Meanwhile, Vanellope is trying to stay in Slaughter Race because she is bored of her original game, abandoning Ralph and abandoning her own game. The most popular character just gone with no explanation. They're both terrible and selfish, and aside from Vanellope throwing away Ralph's medal she made and gave him in the first movie, the scene doesn't seem deserving of being that emotional climax of the two going their separate ways. It just seems like two jerks realizing they're both jerks. It's stupid. Okay, I've ragged on this movie a lot, but to be honest, it's not that bad. There are some generally fun parts, and the new characters are likable enough, with the exception of a couple. But the constant plot changes and overused cliches and references overshadow these moments. The film could be fun and enjoyable at times, and I tried to get to love this movie just as much as I love the first one, but I just can't. I feel the sequel failed to capture the magic the first one brought, where I could watch the first film over and over again. I could maybe watch the second one once or twice before never wanting to pick it up for the next year or so. It could be that I don't connect with the internet and video references as much as I connected with seeing my favorite video game characters, but I couldn't get into this one as much as the first. The directors have said that they don't think a third film is needed. They believe that Ralph and Vanellope's journey is over. And part of me doesn't want to see a third one in fear that it will bomb hard and ruin these characters even more. But the other part of me hopes for one last movie to try to fix the wrongs of the second. It's the same way of how I feel with the Toy Story films. I love the Toy Story movies, but every time they announce a sequel, I fear that it'll be the one that'll bomb. Maybe I'll do that in a separate video, though. But as always, lots of movies have problems, and I'm sorry to say, but Ralph Breaks the Internet is no exception.
I'm bad, and that's good. I will never be good, and that's not bad. There's no one I'd rather be than me.